Hey everyone, welcome back to the Unwritten Murder Files. Thank you so much for tuning in again. I really appreciate you being here. Quick reminder, everything in this story is fiction. Every name, every voice, every room, none of it happened. If it feels like it did, that's the job. We're picking up right where we left off in the rooms we forget. Last time, Detective Mara Voss opened a wall her own mother sealed shut 26 years ago. This is episode 2, The Place Before My Name. Kell did not deny it. That was the first thing Mara noticed. The second was the clock. It hung above the observation glass, its black hands fixed at 7:12. She had been in the room long enough for the numbness in her wrist to deepen where the cuff pressed against the bone, long enough for the rainwater on Kell's shoes to have dried. Yet the minute hand had not moved. Mara looked down at the folder. The photograph of June's phone was no longer on top. The weapon lay there instead. Same angle, same pattern bedspread, same evidence marker near the trigger guard. Kell said, "You are making connections because your mind cannot tolerate uncertainty." Mara looked up. "You said that already." "No, I didn't. You told me forgetting protected me." "That isn't the same sentence." "You said it after I mentioned the serial number." Kell folded his hands. "Mara, we have not discussed a serial number." The air seemed to thin. She looked toward the folder again. The photograph showed enough of the pistol for the engraved number to be visible. She recited it. Kell's face remained neutral. Then he asked, "Where did you see that number?" "On the evidence trolley." "There was no trolley." "In the corridor outside." "You came through central custody." "No, I didn't." Kell leaned back. "Tell me about the corridor." Mara almost answered. The invitation was too clean. He did not want to know what she remembered. He wanted to hear which version had survived. She said, "What time is it?" 7:12. "How long have I been here?" 11 minutes. The answer was impossible. Mara had counted at least 6 minutes before Kell entered. Their conversation since then had lasted longer than that. She pressed her thumbnail into her palm. Pain made the edges of the room sharper. Kell noticed. "You used to do that as a child." Mara stopped. "You were not there when I was a child. I found you after the fire." "That is not what I said." He had made a mistake. Small, but real. Kell had known the habit before the fire or during it. He had seen her inside St. Orison's. Mara said, "What was I holding when you found me?" His eyes shifted toward the observation glass. "Nothing. You wrote that I was holding a blue crayon." "Then why ask?" "Because the report also says you found me outside the east entrance." "I did." "The east entrance collapsed first." Kell said nothing. Mara continued, "The fire report says nobody could use it after 1:40. You signed my recovery time as 2:05. Mistakes happen in chaotic scenes." "Not that many." She began listing them. The wrong gun, the missing body camera footage, the route to headquarters, the stopped clock. June's messages closed under Kell's account, Elias arriving before the case existed. With each detail, Kell's expression became calmer. That frightened her more than anger would have. He said, "Do you know what pattern seeking is?" "Yes. It is the brain's attempt to create meaning from unrelated details." "I know what it is." Under stress, intelligent people are especially vulnerable. They build better stories. Mara looked at the clock. It still read 7:12. Then the second hand moved backwards. One tick, a pause, another tick. Mara watched it continue in reverse. Kell followed her gaze but showed no surprise. "This is not an interview room," she said. "What is it?" "A reconstruction." His silence confirmed it. The fluorescent hum changed pitch. Beneath it, almost too low to hear, the 4-note melody began. Mara turned toward the observation glass. Her reflection looked wrong. For a moment, the woman staring back appeared older. Her hair was longer. One sleeve was stained dark. In her hand was a cassette tape. Then the image returned to normal. Kell said, "Tell me where you hid them." Mara looked at him. "The original tapes." His voice had lost its softness. "Where are they?" She smiled, despite the fear rising through her. "So, that's what this was always about." The lock on the interview room door clicked. Kell turned sharply. The door opened behind him. Elias stood there, holding a ring of keys. He looked directly at Mara and said, Do not trust anything you remember in this room. Then he switched off the lights. When the lights went out, the room did not become dark. A thin blue glow remained around the observation glass, revealing the outline of Kell's chair and the shape of Elias in the doorway. Then the fluorescent hum stopped. The clock stopped ticking backwards. The four-note melody vanished. For the first time since Mara entered the room, she heard what lay beneath those sounds. Ventilation, machinery, a distant reel turning somewhere behind the wall. Elias crossed the room and unlocked the cuff around her wrist. Kell reached inside his coat. Mara moved first. She struck his forearm against the edge of the table, forcing the weapon from his hand. It hit the floor and slid beneath the chair. Kell recovered quickly, but Elias drove his shoulder into him and forced him against the observation glass. The glass flexed. It did not break. Kell stared at Elias with an expression that seemed more disappointed than afraid. You don't know what you're doing, Elias said. That is becoming a recurring problem. Mara retrieved the gun and aimed it at Kell. Sit down. He looked at her. You think leaving this room will make you certain of what is real? No. She backed toward the doorway, but staying would make certainty impossible. Elias locked Kell inside and led Mara into the corridor. The blue walls had disappeared. Or rather, they had never been painted blue at all. Thin illuminated panels had been fixed over bare concrete. Elias shut off a control box near the door, and the panels faded to gray. Mara touched one. Projection film? Light-responsive polymer. It changes color and depth under programmed illumination. The disappearing rooms. Not disappearing, reframed. He opened a cabinet built into the wall. Inside were aerosol canisters, speakers, timing relays, and a compact projector. Mara recognized the sweet smell immediately. You built this. Elias did not deny it. Kell contacted me 6 months ago. He said several witnesses from old child abuse cases were developing linked false memories. And you believed him. He showed me evidence. Fabricated evidence? Some of it, not all. They moved through the corridor quickly. How much did you know? Mara asked. I knew he wanted to trigger your memories of St. Orison's. I knew June had located recordings. I knew sensory reconstruction could help recover associations. You drugged me. I authorized a low-dose inhalant designed to reduce panic responses. You authorized gas in a locked room. I was told it would be administered in a clinical setting with monitoring. Mara stopped walking. You stood beside me while it happened. I realized too late that Kell had changed the compound. You still lied when they came in. If I had confirmed the room existed, he would have moved you somewhere I couldn't reach. That does not make it acceptable. No. Elias's answer came without defense. That is the only honest thing you have said to me. They reached a service stairwell hidden behind an evidence storage door. Elias entered a code into the keypad. Mara noticed his hand shaking again. How do you know the code? It was in my father's notes. The lock released. The stairs descended more deeply than the architecture of the station allowed. As they went down, Elias told her that the building had been constructed over a civil defense bunker. The bunker had later been used for sealed evidence, witness interviews, and psychological evaluations that never appeared on official floor plans. Project Mnemosyne did not end at St. Orison's, he said. The hospital was one site. How many others? I don't know. That answer is becoming convenient. It is also true. At the bottom of the stairs, they found a steel door marked only with a faded number 7. Elias pressed his palm to the scanner. The light turned green. Mara looked at him. You have access. His face changed. I shouldn't. The door opened. Beyond it was a room larger than the station's entire evidence floor. Rows of shelves disappeared into darkness. Thousands of cassettes, videotapes, digital drives, and paper files had been arranged by subject number. Tape machines turned automatically in glass-fronted cabinets. Voices murmured through headphones hanging from hooks. Children counting. Adults confessing. Witnesses repeating sentences until they no longer sounded like language. At the center of the archive stood a glass chamber. June Mercer sat inside it, one wrist secured to the table. She looked exhausted, but alive. Mara ran toward her. June raised her free hand. Don't open the door. Mara stopped. Why? June looked past her. At Elias. Her face tightened with fear. Because he is the one who brought me here. Elias stopped several meters from the glass chamber. He did not deny June's accusation. That frightened Mara more than an argument would have. June's face was bruised along one side. A strip of medical tape covered the inside of her elbow, and the skin around it was marked by several needle punctures. On the table in front of her sat a microphone, a glass of water, and 6 cassette tapes arranged in a careful line. One space remained empty. Mara kept Kell's gun pointed at Elias. Explain. His eyes stayed on June. I don't remember bringing her here. June gave a humorless laugh. That is what you said during every session. What sessions? The ones you conducted. Elias looked around the archive as though seeing it for the first time. His attention caught on a camera above the chamber. A red light blinked steadily beneath the lens. June said, he wore gloves and a dark coat. He met me outside the station after I found Ruth Calder. He told me Kell had discovered the investigation and that he could get me somewhere safe. Mara asked, you trusted him? I trusted the email he showed me. What email? One from you. Mara felt the gun become heavier in her hand. I never contacted you. I know that now. June leaned closer to the glass. He drove me here. I remember entering the garage beneath police headquarters. After that, there are gaps. A lift. A blue corridor. Elias asking me to repeat the names of the 6 children. Elias shook his head. I was with Kell that night. Were you? Yes. Can anyone confirm it besides Kell? He did not answer. June continued. You asked me where Simon Vale hid the original recordings. When I said I didn't know, you played the melody. The 4-note sequence sounded from somewhere in the archive. Elias flinched so violently that his shoulder struck a shelf. Mara turned toward the source, but the melody had already stopped. Who controls this place? She asked. June looked at Elias. He does. No, he said. The word came too quickly. June pointed toward a security panel beside the chamber. Open the subject directory. Mara kept the gun trained on Elias while she crossed to the panel. The screen requested an access code. Elias said, try 041792. What is that? The date Simon told me he found me. Mara entered it. The directory opened immediately. Thousands of records appeared, grouped beneath project names and subject numbers. Mara selected the earliest Mnemosyne file. 6 entries filled the screen. Subject 1, Subject 2, Subject 3, Subject 4, Subject 5, Subject 6. Beside Subject 4 was a photograph of a thin 8-year-old boy with dark hair and a bruise beneath one eye. Elias. Mara opened the file. The name field was blank. Under guardian status, the record read, transferred to Dr. Simon Vale following protocol breach. New identity authorized. Mara looked at Elias. Simon wasn't your father. He became my father. After this program changed your name. He closed his eyes. Yes. June said, Simon tried to get him out. Kell found Elias again after Simon died. Mara opened the treatment history. The entries did not end in 1999. They continued through Elias's childhood, adolescence, medical training, and adult career. Sessions had been conducted at irregular intervals for 26 years. Several recent entries were signed electronically by Elias himself. He stared at them. I didn't write those. June said, you did. You just weren't allowed to remember. One file contained video. Mara pressed play. The footage showed June sitting inside the same glass chamber. A man entered wearing black gloves and a dark coat. His face was clearly visible as he placed a cassette into the machine. Elias. On the recording, June demanded to know why he was doing this. Elias sat opposite her and replied in a voice emptied of emotion, because Subject 6 remembers the fire only when Subject 4 gives her permission. The Elias standing beside Mara whispered, turn it off. The recorded Elias continued, when Mara remembers where she hid the tapes, Dr. Kell will release us both. Mara stopped the video. Elias had begun to shake. Not the controlled tremor she had noticed earlier. His entire body seemed to be fighting an instruction that had outlived the person who gave it. Mara said, you brought June here. Yes. You built the reconstruction rooms. Yes. You knew Kell was manipulating me. I thought I was helping expose him. June spoke quietly. That was the memory he gave you. Elias looked at the shelves surrounding them. Then which parts were mine? Before anyone could answer, a lock engaged somewhere above. Steel shutters descended over the archive doors. A man's voice came through the ceiling speakers. Commander Kell said, "That is the wrong question, Elias." The lights shifted from white to blue. "The question is which version of you I need now." The blue light changed Elias before Kell finished speaking. His shaking stopped. His shoulders lowered, and the fear disappeared from his face with such suddenness that Mara almost mistook it for relief. Then he turned toward her. The movement was slow and deliberate. Mara raised the gun. "Elias." He did not respond. June struck the glass with the flat of her hand. "Don't use his name. It's part of the trigger." Mara kept the weapon aimed at his chest. "What do I call him?" "I don't know." Kell's voice filled the archive. "You never did find out, did you, Subject 6? Elias took one step toward Mara. She stepped back. "Stop." He continued. There was no anger in his expression, no urgency, only concentration. Mara remembered the recorded session in which he had questioned June, the empty voice, the gloves, the instruction repeated as though nothing existed outside it. Subject 6 remembers the fire only when Subject 4 gives her permission. Kell said, "Ask her about the brass key." Elias spoke. "Where did you put the key?" The question passed through Mara like an electrical current. A corridor flashed into view. Blue walls. Smoke gathering against the ceiling. Something small and metallic pressed into her palm. She stumbled against a shelf. June shouted, "Mara, look at me." Elias asked again, "Where did you put the key?" The archive vanished for half a second. Mara was 6 years old, crouching behind an overturned trolley while alarms rang in the corridor. Simon Vale knelt in front of her. Blood had soaked one side of his shirt. He pushed a brass key into her hand and closed her fingers around it. "Not the tapes," he told her. "The index." Mara returned to the archive gasping. Elias was close enough to reach her now. She struck him across the face with the gun. He fell against the glass chamber, but recovered almost immediately. June said, "The melody activates him. Pain won't stop it." "What will?" Simon knew Kell could condition the children. He must have built in something else. Kell laughed softly through the speakers. Simon believed affection could outperform repetition. It was his most sentimental mistake. Mara looked at Elias. Affection, not a command, a relationship. Find one another again. Use the melody. Then use the door. She lowered the gun slightly. "Elias, you told me not to mistake restraint for absence." He kept advancing. "You said curiosity wasn't useful, then admitted it was discipline." No reaction. "You stood in June's apartment and watched me instead of the evidence because you recognized the door." His hand closed around her wrist. Mara did not pull away. "You told me I didn't need to trust you in the sealed room." His grip tightened, turning the gun away from him. "You said I only needed to listen to your voice." Elias twisted her wrist. Pain shot up her arm, but Mara stayed close enough for him to see her face. "Now, listen to mine." She hummed the 4-note melody, not as it had played through the walls. Backwards. The final note first, descending into the beginning. Elias froze. The pressure on her wrist loosened. Mara repeated it. His eyes lost focus. Then he whispered a word she did not recognize. "Micah." June heard it too. What did he say? Elias released Mara and staggered back. "My name." The lights flickered. Kell's voice sharpened. Subject 4, complete the instruction. Elias looked up toward the speakers. "My name was Micah." A memory moved through his face. Mara could see it arriving, piece by piece. A room. A man kneeling in front of him. A promise. Elias pressed both hands against his temples. Simon said the melody worked in 2 directions. Forward to make us follow, backwards to bring us out. Kell cut the speakers. The archive fell silent. Mara looked at the 6 cassettes on the table inside June's chamber. Simon had not divided the truth because children were reliable. He had divided it because no single corrupted memory could be trusted. The pattern was the proof. Mara examined the brass locking plate beneath the chamber door. A keyhole sat below the electronic panel. She remembered smoke, Simon's blood, and a small metal object hidden somewhere no adult thought to search. Not behind the imaginary door. Inside it, the blue chalk drawing, she said. June leaned toward the glass. What about it? It wasn't marking a hiding place. Mara saw the child's lines again, the crooked frame, the handle drawn too high, 3 short marks beneath it, where everyone assumed the crayon had slipped. They were not slips. They were numbers. 1, 7, 4. A storage reference. Mara looked across the archive shelves until she found row 1, cabinet 7, drawer 4. Inside lay a scorched children's book. Its pages had been hollowed out. At the center was a brass key, and beneath it, wrapped in blackened cloth, was a cassette labeled Simon Vale, unedited. The cassette was warm. Mara could not explain why. It had been sealed inside a scorched book, locked in a steel drawer beneath the station for more than 2 decades, yet the plastic felt almost alive against her palm. Elias stood beside her, pale and unsteady. "Do not play it through the archive system," he said. "Kell controls the speakers." June pointed toward a small recorder on the table inside the glass chamber. "That one is isolated. He used it during my interviews." Mara unlocked the chamber with the brass key. The door opened with a release of stale, refrigerated air. June stepped out carefully, favoring one leg, and immediately took the cassette from Mara. She examined the tape window. "The reel is intact." "You know how to verify it?" Mara asked. "I spent 2 years listening to copies that had been cut apart and rebuilt. The originals have a background frequency from St. Orison's emergency generator, 63 hertz. It was unstable after midnight." Elias looked at her. "You recognize that from the recordings?" "I recognized it because it was in my dreams before I knew what it was." June inserted the cassette. Mara expected the 4-note melody. Instead, the recording opened with an alarm. A man was breathing heavily near the microphone. Furniture scraped in the background. Somewhere farther away, children were crying. Simon Vale spoke. "This is the final unedited record of Project Mnemosyne." His voice was weaker than on the other tapes. "If this recording survives, the official testimony concerning St. Orison's must be considered compromised. Detective Adrian Kell and Dr. Evelyn Voss have conducted unauthorized memory implantation on 6 juvenile witnesses." Mara gripped the edge of the table. Simon continued, "The subjects were not selected for treatment. They were selected because each had witnessed police misconduct, institutional abuse, or evidence relevant to an active prosecution." June looked toward the shelves. Thousands of files. Thousands of possible witnesses. On the tape, a woman entered the room. Mara recognized Evelyn's voice immediately. "You cannot take those recordings." Simon answered, "They are already gone." "Where?" "With the children." Evelyn sounded frightened. "Not guilty, not yet. You divided the information between them?" "I gave each child one verifiable fragment, names, dates, locations, serial numbers. You used them as storage. I gave them a way to prove what was done to them." A door opened violently. Kell's younger voice filled the recording. "You gave damaged children a collection of meaningless details." Simon said, "Details that become a confession when placed together." A gunshot cracked through the tape. Elias closed his eyes. The recording captured Simon falling, followed by Evelyn screaming. Then came the voice of a child. "Mara, you killed him." Kell ordered her to hand over the cassette. Another child began crying. Elias or Micah called Simon, "Dad." There was a struggle. Then Mara heard the sound that had haunted the edges of her memory for 26 years. A metal instrument striking bone. Kell fell, but he did not die. Evelyn seized the recorder. "Look at me, Mara," she said. "You did this." The child answered, "He shot Dr. Vale." "No, you hit him. You started the fire. You killed Simon." Mara whispered. She planted the memory immediately. Elias nodded. On the tape, Evelyn repeated the lie until the child's denial weakened. Then Simon spoke again from the floor. Barely audible. "Evelyn, stop." The recording captured her next words clearly. "I cannot." A match struck. A child began sobbing. Mara heard her younger self say, "The tapes have to burn." Simon told her not to light it. Not because he feared for the evidence. Because children were still locked in the ward. The match fell. Flames caught. The alarm became deafening. Then, through smoke and static, Evelyn spoke directly into the recorder. Adrian, if you find this, Subject 6 remembers the index. Subject 4 is the key that opens her. The tape ended. June stopped the machine. No one spoke. Then, slow applause echoed from the entrance to the archive. Kell stood between two armed officers. Behind him, Dr. Evelyn Voss stepped into the blue light. Older now, but unmistakably the woman from the photograph. She looked at Mara and smiled with exhausted tenderness. "My darling," she said, "you finally remembered me." Mara had imagined meeting her mother many times. In some versions, Evelyn Voss was dead. In others, she was a blurred figure at the edge of a childhood photograph, someone whose absence could be explained by illness, fear, or an impossible choice made during the fire. She had never imagined her walking into an underground archive beside Commander Kell. Evelyn's hair was almost entirely gray, but the resemblance remained unmistakable. Mara saw it in the shape of her mouth and the slight tilt of her head when she studied someone. The woman in the observation glass had not looked like Mara. Mara looked like her. Evelyn took another step forward. Kell raised one hand, stopping her. "Do not approach the subjects." Mara almost laughed. "Subjects." Kell looked at her as though the word required no explanation. Evelyn ignored him. "I knew you would recognize the door eventually." Mara kept the gun aimed between them. "You left me in a burning hospital. I got you out. Kell found me outside. Because I carried you there." Mara remembered wet grass, smoke, a woman's hands gripping her shoulders. For years, she had assigned those hands to Kell. Evelyn continued. "You had inhaled smoke. You were confused. Adrian agreed to place you under his protection." "Protection?" "To keep you close," June said, so he could monitor what she remembered. Kell's gaze shifted toward her. "June, you have misunderstood your role here. My role was to find the tapes for you. Your role was to make Mara believe the search was her idea." Evelyn looked at Kell with open disgust. "You said June would not be harmed." Kell's expression remained unchanged. "I said she would remain useful." Mara studied her mother. "You helped him build Mnemosyne." Evelyn did not deny it. "We believed memory could be stabilized. Children gave inconsistent accounts because they were frightened, pressured, and questioned badly. We thought we could remove the fear from the recollection. You replaced the recollection. At first, only small details." Elias spoke from behind Mara. "There is no small fabricated memory." Evelyn flinched at the sound of his voice. "Micah." He stared at her. "You remember that name." "I chose it." "No, you took it away." Evelyn's composure fractured. "Simon changed your identity to hide you. Adrian would have found you." "He did find me. Years later. And you let him." "I was trying to survive." Mara said, "So were we." The words silenced her. Kell stepped forward. "This reunion is touching but irrelevant. Mara, you have the index. Elias has recovered his original identity. Simon's tape has confirmed the fragments remain intact." Mara understood then. The confession was not the cassette in June's recorder. That tape proved what happened at St. Orison's, but Kell's crimes extended far beyond the hospital. The complete record existed in the 6 children, each carrying a separate piece. Kell had engineered June's investigation, Elias's return, and Mara's destabilization for one purpose. He needed them to remember the other survivors. "Where are they?" he asked. Mara said nothing. Kell lifted his gun toward June. Subject 3 found them. June's face changed. Mara looked at her. "The birthday cards," she said. "The anonymous messages. You were contacting the others." June nodded slowly. Kell said, "You will tell me where they are, or I will begin removing the parts of the pattern I no longer need." Evelyn moved between his weapon and June. "Adrian, this is over." "No," he said. "This is the first time in 26 years that every surviving piece is within reach." Mara glanced at the broadcast console beside the chamber. A red light was blinking. "Not recording. Transmitting." June followed her gaze. Then she smiled. Kell saw it too late. June said, "Every surviving piece is already on the air." For the first time since entering the archive, Kell looked uncertain. It was not fear, not yet. It was calculation interrupted. His eyes moved from June to the blinking red light, then to the old broadcast console beside the glass chamber. You could not have connected this room to the station. June leaned one hand against the table to steady herself. I didn't. Kell looked toward the shelves. Thousands of recordings surrounded him, each one labeled, cataloged, and preserved inside the system he had spent decades building. June said, "You did." The archives network had been designed to transfer audio without leaving the bunker. Interviews could be sent directly to evidence storage, review terminals, and secure police servers. June had discovered that the same infrastructure still connected to the warehouse that housed her radio station. Before the printing press closed, the building had served as an emergency civil defense broadcast center. The line had survived every renovation that followed. Studio B had never belonged to the radio station. It had belonged to Mnemosyne. June told them she had found the connection 6 weeks earlier after hearing a child's voice bleeding through a damaged cable during a live program. She had initially assumed the sound came from an archive broadcast. Then the child had spoken a date that had not yet occurred. That had led her to the hidden studio, the tapes, and eventually Ruth Calder. I scheduled a dead man broadcast, June said. If I failed to cancel it tonight, the station would open the old line automatically. Kell's confidence returned. A live transmission proves nothing. Fragments of distressed memories, presented without context, will be dismissed within hours. June shook her head. The broadcast didn't begin when we entered the archive. She pointed to Simon Vale's cassette. It began when Mara pressed play. Mara understood. The unedited tape had gone out first. Simon's statement, the gunshot, Evelyn's instructions. Every word was already being heard beyond the bunker. Kell looked toward the officers behind him. Neither man moved. Their uncertainty was visible now. One lowered his weapon several centimeters. Kell noticed. What you heard was manipulated evidence, he told them. Detective Voss is experiencing a dissociative episode. Dr. Vale has admitted to abducting June Mercer. Elias said, both of those statements may be true. Mara looked at him. He stepped forward, his hands visible, and neither changes what is on the tape. Kell turned his weapon toward Elias. You remained particularly easy to direct, Micah. The use of the name struck him, but he did not retreat. Elias said, not anymore. The speakers above them activated. At first, Mara expected Kell's voice. Instead, a woman began reciting a list of dates. Her voice was older than June's, controlled but trembling slightly. June closed her eyes in relief. Nadia Cross, she said. Subject 5. Nadia gave 6 dates. After each one, she named a child witness whose original testimony had disappeared from police archives. When she finished, another voice took her place. A man identified himself as Daniel Rowe, Subject 1. He recited file numbers and the names of officers who had attended unrecorded interviews. Then came Leah Soren, Subject 2, giving the locations of 3 Mnemosyne sites concealed beneath public institutions. Each account sounded incomplete by itself. Together, they formed a structure. Dates connected to cases, cases connected to officers, officers connected to hidden recordings. The pattern Simon had preserved. June approached the microphone. My name is June Mercer, she said. For most of my life, I believed I was only investigating Project Mnemosyne. I now know that I was Subject 3. She recited her fragment, a sequence of evidence box numbers stored in the Central Police Archive. Mara recognized the numbering format immediately. Those boxes would contain the physical records needed to corroborate the broadcast. Elias moved to the microphone next. He hesitated before speaking. Kell said, think carefully. Elias looked at him. I have. He identified himself first as Elias Vale. Then he corrected it. My original name was Micah Arden. I was Subject 4. His fragment was a list of authorization codes. Every code belonged to senior police, medical, and judicial officials who had approved transfers into the program. One of the officers behind Kell lowered his weapon completely. Kell raised his own. Evelyn stepped into his path again. Enough. He shoved her aside. She fell against the edge of the console. Mara aimed at him. Kell. He turned toward her. The archive speakers carried her voice out across the city before she reached the microphone. My name is Detective Mara Voss. I was Subject 6. Her fragment had remained hidden more deeply than the others. Not a list. A location. the place where Simon had sent the original index before the fire. Mara remembered the brass key in her hand, but also something else. A railway locker. A woman kneeling beside her in a station bathroom, removing a cassette from beneath her coat. Evelyn. Her mother had not carried every tape back to Kell. She had hidden a second archive. Mara gave the locker number, the station, and the false name under which it had been rented. Evelyn looked up from the floor. You remembered. Yes. I kept it safe. You kept yourself safe. The distinction hurt her mother. Mara did not look away. Sirens sounded somewhere above them. They were distant at first, almost lost beneath the server fans, but they grew steadily louder. Kell listened. Local units answer to me. June said, those aren't local units. The broadcast had reached national investigators, journalists, lawyers, former subjects, and anyone else awake during the listening hour. Copies were already being recorded outside Kell's control. He could suppress a case file. He could not suppress an audience. Kell seized Evelyn by the arm and dragged her upright, pressing his weapon beneath her jaw. Mara kept her own gun trained on him. Evelyn did not struggle. Kell said, open the exit. Mara answered, you designed it. I need your access. I don't have it. You opened the chamber? With Simon's key. Then use it. The key only opens what Simon built. Kell glanced at the steel doors. For the first time, the architecture of Mnemosyne worked against him. The shutters had descended when he arrived. The archive was sealed under his own security protocol. Only an external command could release it. The siren stopped directly overhead. Heavy footsteps entered the bunker stairwell. Kell pulled Evelyn closer. You owe me your life, he told Mara. No. His grip tightened around the gun. I found you in the fire. You found the index. I raised you. You monitored me. I made you a detective. You made sure I became someone who trusted evidence more than memory. Mara lowered her voice. That was your mistake. Kell fired. The shot struck the broadcast console. Glass exploded across the table. The live indicator went dark. Evelyn drove her elbow into his ribs. Mara crossed the space between them before he could recover. She struck his wrist, forced the gun downward, and heard a second shot disappear into the concrete floor. Elias caught Evelyn as she fell away. Kell and Mara collided with a shelf. Cassettes rained down around them. He was stronger than she remembered and older than he believed. He reached for her throat, but Mara trapped his arm and forced him face down against the floor. He continued fighting even after she secured one wrist. You have no idea what happens when people stop trusting their own memories, he said. Mara locked the second cuff. They start checking the evidence. The steel doors lifted. Armed officers entered, followed by national investigators wearing body cameras and carrying warrants that had not passed through Kell's department. Mara stepped back. No one applauded. No one offered immediate reassurance. They simply began photographing the room, the shelves, the recordings, the man who had hidden behind procedure for 26 years. As Kell was taken away, he turned toward Mara. You still don't know what your mother did after the fire. Mara looked at Evelyn. Her mother's face had gone pale. Kell smiled. Then the officers let him out. Above them, the damaged broadcast console gave a final spark. The red light returned. Despite the bullet lodged in its casing, the transmission was still live. And the entire city had heard him warn Mara that the story was not finished. By noon, the underground archive no longer belonged to Kell. Federal investigators sealed the bunker, copied the broadcast logs, and began removing evidence in numbered containers. Every cassette left the room under 2 signatures and the view of a body camera. Mara watched the process from a folding chair near the stairwell, wrapped in a gray emergency blanket she did not remember accepting. Above ground, police headquarters had become a crime scene. Officers were ordered away from their desks. Reporters gathered behind barricades. Former witnesses called the station, claiming they recognized voices from the broadcast. By mid-afternoon, 3 judges, 2 retired detectives, and a former hospital administrator had retained lawyers. Kell said nothing after his arrest. Evelyn said even less. Mara's mother was taken to a separate interview site under protective custody. Before leaving, she asked to speak privately with Mara. Mara refused. She had spent 26 years living inside other people's explanations. She was not ready to accept another simply because it came from the woman who had given her face, her voice, and perhaps even her name. June was transported to hospital with dehydration, chemical exposure, and injuries consistent with prolonged restraint. She remained conscious long enough to confirm that the broadcast had been duplicated automatically across several remote servers. "The story is safe," she told Mara as the paramedics lifted her onto the stretcher. Mara looked toward the bunker doors. "No story is safe." June managed a weak smile. "Then at least this one is difficult to bury." Elias stood several meters away while an investigator photographed the bruises on his wrists. His status remained uncertain. He had been both victim and participant, conditioned subject and adult clinician. His recorded abduction of June could not be ignored, even if Kell had engineered the dissociative state in which it occurred. When the investigator finished, Elias approached Mara slowly. "You should not be alone tonight," he said. She studied him. "That sounds like medical advice." "It is not." "Then what is it?" "Concern." The word seemed to cost him something. Mara folded the blanket more tightly around herself. "You lied from the moment we met." "Yes." "You helped Kell trigger memories you knew might not be reliable." "Yes." "You abducted June." His gaze dropped. "Yes." "And you still think you should be the person standing beside me?" "No." The answer surprised her. Elias continued, "I think I want to be. That is different." For a moment, neither spoke. The easy version of what existed between them would have called it intimacy. They had survived the same rooms, heard the same voices, and carried fragments of the same crime. But shared damage could imitate closeness. Mara knew that now. She said, "We do not build anything on what happened down there." "I agree. We do not call dependence trust." "No. And we do not pretend that understanding why you lied makes the lies harmless." "It does not." His answers remained clinical, but his expression did not. Mara looked toward the ambulance carrying June. "Then what is left?" Elias considered the question carefully. "Whatever remains when neither of us is being instructed." The investigators escorted him away for formal questioning. He did not ask Mara to wait for him. She appreciated that more than she wanted to. As evening approached, Mara finally left headquarters through the public entrance. The rain had stopped. The barricades remained, and camera flashes followed her down the steps, but no one got close enough to ask a question. At the bottom, she found a small object inside her coat pocket. A fragment of blue chalk. She turned it over in her palm. She had no memory of taking it from June's apartment. Written along one flat edge, in handwriting too small to see until she held it beneath a streetlight, were 4 words. There were never only 6. That's the end of season 1 of The Rooms We Forget. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the show grow, and it's the only way you'll know when the next season opens. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next room.